My husband had only been gone for 6 months when the inheritance cleared. $5.20 million wired quietly, almost silently, into my account. No celebration. No announcement. No sharing the news with family. I kept the paperwork in a plain, unmarked folder hidden inside an old sweater drawer. The same drawer where I kept anniversary letters and his last birthday card to me. People imagine that inheriting millions brings relief, freedom, or happiness. But in my case, it brought something else entirely: silence. A silence I protected like a fragile egg, because deep inside, I knew something ugly would surface the moment anyone discovered the truth. Money doesn't change who you are. It only reveals who the people around you truly are. My husband used to say that often. Back then I thought he was being dramatic. Now, I realize he was warning me, preparing me. Maybe he knew what his absence would unleash. A week after my son's wedding, when the glow of the celebration should have still been warming our home, trouble arrived at my front door wearing cheap perfume and a forced smile. My daughter-in-law, freshly married, painted like a doll, confidence way beyond her understanding, showed up with a notary public and a stack of blank papers tucked neatly inside a leather folder. She didn't even ask to come inside politely. She walked in the moment the door cracked open, as if she already owned the house. The notary shuffled in behind her, awkward and embarrassed, as if she herself didn't know why she was there. I knew exactly why. My daughter-in-law thought I was poor, fragile, easy to manipulate, the sort of mother-in-law she could overpower with fake sweetness and a little legal pressure. She assumed I had nothing, and that assumption was my greatest advantage. I smiled when she greeted me with that rehearsed sugary voice, one she used only when she wanted something. But her eyes told the real story. Cold, calculating, hungry. She set the papers on the kitchen table as if she were placing bait over a trap. "Mom," she began, using the word with such a casual disrespect it scratched somewhere deep inside my chest. "We just need your signature on a few things to make life easier for all of us." Life easier for them. She didn't realize that I knew the dance. I recognized manipulation when I saw it. The fake politeness, the sudden interest in my health, the exaggerated concern about my living alone at this age. She glanced around my modest home, judging every inch as though already measuring how quickly she could strip my life apart if I allowed it. She expected fear in my eyes, confusion, desperation. She expected me to be the vulnerable old woman she whispered about behind my back, the one she thought was a burden, someone draining the family like a tick, someone they should just shove in a home already. I heard those words more times than she would ever imagine, but the thing she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was not the helpless woman they believed me to be. I had built a career. I had survived grief. I had managed a household while my husband fought cancer for 2 brutal years. And now, with millions quietly tucked under my name, I was far more powerful than the girl sitting across from me scribbling her initials on pages she barely understood. She didn't know that the so-called poor widow she wanted to bully could buy and sell half the neighborhood if she wished. She didn't know that I kept quiet because silence was safer than revealing what greed could destroy. So I let her talk. I let her rehearse her little speech about future planning and family support, while the notary watched nervously from behind her glasses. "I don't understand," I said softly, playing along, tilting my head in the way she expected. "What do these papers mean?" A flicker of triumph flashed in her eyes. Victory, she thought. "Oh, nothing complicated," she said quickly. "Just power of attorney forms, home ownership updates, medical decision transfers, simple things." Simple. In her mind, signing away my freedom, my home, my rights, and my financial control was simple. She spoke so confidently, like she had already won. Like she and my son had discussed my future over their honeymoon dinner. Like they believed I had no choice, no intelligence, no self-respect. I looked at her manicured hand sliding the pen toward me. For a moment, I imagined how different this moment could have been. If she loved me, respected me, even tolerated me, I might have trusted her with real family matters someday. But she didn't want a mother. She wanted a target. A stepping stone. And I wasn't going to be one. Not now. Not ever. I smiled again, slow, polite, completely controlling the situation without her noticing. "Why didn't my son come with you?" I asked gently. A shadow passed over her face. He's busy, she muttered, looking away. That was a lie. A clumsy, thoughtless lie. I felt something tighten inside me. Not anger, not fear, disappointment. My son, the boy I raised with sacrifices he'll never understand, had sent his wife to ambush me with legal traps instead of facing me himself. It hurt. More than I expected. But pain has a strange way of sharpening your mind. And in that moment I decided something quietly inside myself. They used my kindness as weakness. They had forgotten who they were dealing with. I'll look these over, I said kindly, placing my hand gently on the folder. But not today. You two should go now. I'm a bit tired. Her face twisted. She wasn't expecting resistance. The notary looked relieved. And in that split second of confusion on her face, something inside me felt strong again. Solid, unshakable. They had no idea who I really was. They had no idea what I truly owned. And they had no idea what storm they had just awakened. For the next 3 days after their visit, I didn't hear a word from my son or his wife. Not a call, not a text, not even a polite check-in to see if I was alive. Silence sat beside me at the breakfast table like an old friend. Familiar, heavy, but no longer frightening. I moved through the house slowly, touching the framed photographs on the shelves, each one a reminder of a time when my son still ran into my arms, when he still trusted me, when he still believed family meant loyalty rather than leverage. I replayed the scene in the kitchen over and over, the smug confidence in my daughter-in-law's eyes, the cold calculation hidden under her smile, the unspoken betrayal in the fact that my son sent her instead of coming himself. More than the money, more than the papers, more than the manipulation, it was that abandonment that cut the deepest. But I refused to collapse under that weight. I had learned long ago that sorrow, if fed, becomes a parasite. So I let it pass through me instead of settling in my bones. On the 4th day, my son finally showed up at my house. No warning. No apology. He walked in like someone entering a courtroom, not a home. His shoulders were stiff, his jaw tight, his eyes uneasy. He looked at me not with the softness of a child speaking to his mother, but with the caution of a man preparing to negotiate. It broke my heart in a quiet, private way. "Mom," he said, clearing his throat, "we need to talk. We need to talk." Those 4 words rarely bring good news. He sat across from me, rubbing his palms together nervously. I could tell he had been coached. Rehearsing lines fed to him by his new wife, memorizing arguments that didn't belong to his nature. My son was never the manipulative kind. He was gentle as a boy, thoughtful, sensitive. But marriage, especially sudden marriage, can bend people into shapes they never imagined. He exhaled slowly. "She told me you refused to sign the papers." I nodded. "Yes, because I didn't see any reason to sign them." He flinched. "Mom, she's worried about your health. And your finances." "And my finances?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You've never seen my bank statements. How can she be worried about something she knows nothing about?" His lips tightened, and he looked away like a child caught lying. "She's just trying to help." I leaned forward gently. "Is she helping you? Or are you helping her?" He didn't answer. The silence told me everything I needed to know. I could feel the shift. My son was no longer speaking from his heart. He was speaking from hers. He wanted me to trust his wife more than I trusted my own instincts. And still, despite everything, I didn't want to embarrass him or hurt him. "Not yet. Tell me honestly," I said softly. "Do you think I'm a burden?" His head jerked up, eyes wide. "No, of course not." "Do you think I'm draining you?" "No, Mom, I never said that." "Then who did?" I asked calmly. His mouth opened, then closed. He blinked rapidly. And that's when I saw it, the truth flickering across his features like a quick shadow. He had heard those words from his wife. Maybe in a heated moment. Maybe whispered with arrogance. Maybe discussed privately without realizing I would ever know. Those words were seeds of poison, planted in soil too soft. His heart. I didn't push further. I simply nodded. "I see." He shifted uncomfortably, realizing I knew more than he intended. "Mom, don't make this complicated." he said, voice strained. She's trying. She really is. She wants what's best for us. For us. Not for me. Not for the family. Just for them. I folded my hands. Does she know how long your father and I worked to build this home? Does she know how many nights I spent taking care of him while he was sick? Does she know how much you and I have survived together? He swallowed hard. Mom, this isn't about the past. It's always about the past, I whispered. The past shapes who stands with you now. And who stands against you. He rubbed his face with both hands, clearly overwhelmed. Mom, can you please just sign the papers? It will make things easier. I studied him, my son, the boy I raised, the man he became, the husband he was trying so desperately to be. And something inside me hardened. Not against him, but against the web his wife was weaving around him. He was tangled, not malicious. Misguided, not cruel. I wouldn't punish him for his blindness, but I also refused to let anyone drag me into the shadows. I inhaled deeply. Son, tell me one thing. Do you know what's in those papers? He hesitated. She explained it. No, I said firmly. Did you read them? His silence stretched like a thin thread, ready to snap. He shook his head slowly. No, I didn't. I nodded. I already knew that. But I needed him to say it out loud. Then don't ask me to sign something you wouldn't sign yourself. His shoulders dropped, deflated. The fight left him. He suddenly seemed smaller, not physically but spiritually. Mom, I don't know what to do, he whispered. I softened. Despite everything, he was still my child. Do nothing, I said gently. Let time show you who is really protecting you. And who is using you. He didn't argue after that. He just sat there quietly, staring at his hands, wrestling with the truth he wasn't ready to admit. When he finally left, he hugged me. But the hug was weak, distracted, as if he didn't know which world he belonged to anymore, mine or hers. As the door closed behind him, I felt the house settle into a heavier silence than before. One filled with unanswered questions, hidden motives, and a storm quietly forming on the horizon. And deep down, I sensed something unsettling. This wasn't the end of the battle. It was only the beginning. For a while, things settled into an uneasy quiet. My son didn't bring up the papers again, and his wife didn't show up unannounced with a notary like she owned the place. But that kind of silence, the kind that sits heavy and calculated, never lasts long. It's the kind of quiet a storm makes before it cracks the sky open. 10 days passed. 10 days of forced politeness, short text messages, and awkward phone calls from my son that felt more like welfare checks than conversations filled with love. In those days, I kept myself busy. I cleaned closets that didn't need cleaning. I reorganized shelves that were already tidy. I baked bread even though no one was around to eat it. I moved through the house like a ghost, knowing that despite its warmth and history, my home had become the battlefield of someone else's greed. On the 11th day, just as I finished watering the plants by the kitchen window, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I recognized the low rumble of my son's engine immediately. But the slam of the car door, loud and sharp like a challenge thrown at the world, told me he wasn't alone, or he wasn't calm. I opened the door before he could knock, and the sight of him standing on the porch made my heart sink. His face was tight, his jaw clenched, his eyes restless with worry, anger, and something else, a kind of fear he didn't want to admit. Mom, he said in a low voice, we need to talk again. His tone was different this time. Desperate but trying not to show it. I stepped aside and let him in. The moment he entered, he began pacing the living room, running a hand through his hair repeatedly. She thinks. He started then stopped. He inhaled sharply. She thinks you don't trust her. I stood silently. I wasn't going to lie just to soothe her ego. He continued. She says you're making her feel unwelcome. She feels judged. I almost laughed, but the situation wasn't funny. Did she tell you why I didn't sign the papers? I asked calmly. He avoided my eyes. She said you were confused. Confused. A word young people like her used to politely call someone old and incompetent. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from the realization that my son truly didn't know me anymore. Son, I said gently, I wasn't confused. I understood exactly what she wanted me to sign. He finally stopped pacing. Then why didn't you sign? Because, I replied quietly, a person should never sign their life away just because someone else is in a hurry to control it. My words landed like a heavy stone. I could see them sinking into him, forcing him to confront an uncomfortable truth he had been avoiding. For the first time in weeks, he looked at me, not as the obstacle his wife told him I was, not as a burden or a problem, but as his mother. The woman who raised him. The woman who sacrificed. The woman who had never, not once, betrayed him. His voice softened. Mom, I don't know what's happening anymore. She says you're trying to shut her out. She says you don't care about our future. Your future. I repeated, emphasizing the word gently. Or her future tied to mine. He swallowed, unable to answer. I walked toward the old wooden cabinet in the hallway. My husband's pride and joy. Inside, beneath neatly folded linens and envelopes of old photographs, I kept the documents that proved everything. The legal proof of the inheritance, the bank statements, the lawyer's letters, the will. I pulled out the folder, walked back to my son, and placed it on the coffee table without a word. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. I sat across from him and said, "Open it." He hesitated. "Mom, what is this?" "Open it," I repeated. He slowly lifted the folder open, and his face changed instantly. Shock washed over him, followed by disbelief, then embarrassment, then a deep, painful ache. He scanned the numbers again and again, as if hoping the ink had lied. "Mom, what is this?" "My husband left it for me," I said calmly. $5.20 million. I didn't tell anyone because grief is heavy enough without adding greed to it. He stared at me, speechless, his lips parting but no words coming out. He turned the pages with trembling fingers. I watched emotion after emotion cross his face. Confusion, guilt, regret, shame. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because," I whispered, "money changes people. Turns kindness into calculation. It turns love into transactions. And I didn't want to see that happen in my home." His eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I didn't know," he said, voice cracking. "I know," I replied gently. He sank onto the couch, head dropping into his hands. He began but couldn't finish. "She didn't think you had anything," he managed. "She said you were struggling. She said we needed to take over so you wouldn't be a burden later." I closed my eyes, steadying myself. "She thinks I'm poor," I said softly. "And she thinks you're her tool to secure her future." He didn't deny it. For a long, heavy moment we sat in silence, both processing the truth unfolding between us. When he finally looked up, his eyes were shining, not with tears but with realization. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I reached out and took his hand. "You don't need to apologize. You just need to open your eyes." He nodded slowly, eyes distant, as if seeing his wife clearly for the first time. "What do I do?" he whispered. I squeezed his hand gently. "Do nothing yet. Observe. Listen. Don't confront her unless you're ready. Let her reveal who she really is." He swallowed hard. "What if she's using me?" This time I didn't soften the truth. "Then you need to decide if that's the life you want to live." He leaned back, exhaling shakily, the weight of truth settling on him like a stone. "I never thought she could do this," he whispered. "People rarely do until their pockets are at stake." The clock ticked quietly in the background as we sat there. Mother and son bound by love, betrayed by someone who had married not for family, but for opportunity. This was no longer a misunderstanding, no longer an awkward conflict. This was the beginning of a truth my son could no longer ignore. And somewhere inside me I knew this story was far from over. For the next week my son lived between two worlds, one built on truth, the other on illusion. I saw it in the way he called me more often, in the pauses between his sentences, in the hesitation in his voice whenever his wife's name came up. He was drifting, unraveling quietly, realizing that the woman he married didn't just misunderstand me. She underestimated him. She thought she could control him through fear, guilt, and manipulation. She thought she could isolate him from me, then slowly mold him into someone dependent on her approval. It was a tactic older than time, one my husband had warned me about long before he got sick. Not every smile is kind, he would say. Not every hand reaching toward you is offering help. And now, years after his death, I saw the truth of his words standing in the doorway of my son's marriage. One evening around 8 o'clock my phone rang. It was my son. His voice was low, almost whispering. "Mom, can I come over?" "Of course," I said, already sensing something had happened. He arrived 30 minutes later. His hair messy, his face red, his eyes tired and swollen. He looked like someone who had been arguing for hours. I didn't ask questions. I simply put the kettle on and waited. He sat at the table, elbows on the wood, hands covering his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. "She found the papers," he said quietly. "The inheritance documents. She went through my things. She confronted me." My heart tightened. "Did you tell her?" "No," he said quickly. "I told her the folder was about Dad's medical records. But she didn't believe me." He lifted his head slowly, and the look in his eyes was something I had never seen before. Fear mixed with a deep, aching disappointment. "Mom." She asked me if I married her because I wanted stability. She accused me of hiding family wealth from her. She said she deserved transparency because she was my wife. I studied his expression. He wasn't angry, he was confused, torn, betrayed. Exactly the emotional state manipulators love to exploit. But this time something had changed. He wasn't blindly accepting her narrative anymore. He was questioning, thinking, seeing. "Then what happened?" I asked gently. He took a slow breath. She told me you were manipulating me, that you were trying to turn me against her. She said you were jealous of her role in my life." I didn't react. I had expected something like this. "What did you say?" He looked down. I didn't know what to say. Silence pulsed between us. A silence filled with realizations he wasn't ready to voice yet. He rubbed his temples. "Mom, she keeps asking me about your finances. She keeps bringing up long-term care homes. She keeps suggesting we should take responsibility for your future. But I can't tell if she cares or if she just wants control. People like her don't care about futures," I said softly. "They care about access." He swallowed hard. "She asked me if you had a will, and what you plan to leave behind." There it was, the truth finally stepping out of the shadows. "She asked that." He nodded, shame coloring his cheeks. "And when I told her it wasn't her business, she got angry. Really angry." I placed my hand on his gently. "Son, listen to me. A marriage built on love asks, how can we grow together? A marriage built on greed asks, what can I gain from you? Which one do you think you're in?" He looked away, tears gathering in his eyes. "I don't know anymore." I wanted to hug him, to hold him the way I did when he was little and scraped his knees. But this wasn't a scraped knee. This was a fracture in his heart. A fracture she had caused through manipulation, entitlement, and unchecked ambition. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling. "Did Dad know she was like this?" I shook my head. "Your father passed before he could meet her. But he knew enough about people to predict the dangers." My son exhaled shakily. "I feel like I failed you. I let her treat you like you were nothing." I leaned forward, lifting his chin gently so he would look at me. "You didn't fail me. You were lied to, misled, blinded by someone you trusted. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I don't know what to do, Mom." "Then do nothing," I repeated softly. "Don't rush judgment. Don't confront her in anger. Let her reveal her true intentions. People like her cannot hide their greed for long." He nodded slowly. But then he said something that made my heart stop. "Mom, she told me she doesn't want you around. She said you're draining us. She said you're a burden. She said we should put you in a home before things get complicated." I felt the words hit like a physical blow, but I didn't let it show. I had already heard her say similar things before, whispered with careless sharpness. But hearing them confirmed by my own son, that hurt in a deeper place. And what do you think? I asked quietly. He looked up horrified. I would never do that to you. Never. I can't believe she said it. I didn't even know how to react. I just froze. That's because love freezes when betrayal walks into the room. He exhaled shakily, looking lost. Mom, I think I made a mistake. I shook my head gently. No. You made a choice. People make mistakes after choices, not before them. What matters now is what you do next. He leaned back, eyes glistening with unshed tears. What should I do? Observe her, I said calmly. Protect your heart. And don't let her push you into decisions you'll regret. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. You don't need to say sorry, I whispered. You just need to remember who you are. He stood slowly, breathing deeply as if preparing to walk into a world he didn't recognize anymore. I'll keep you updated, he said softly. I'll be here, I replied. When he left, closing the door softly behind him, the air in the house felt colder, not from the weather outside, but from the realization that my son was fighting a silent battle inside his own home. A battle he didn't start, but one he would eventually have to win, or lose everything to. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between my son and his wife grew thicker, heavier, and harder to hide, like fog seeping through every corner of their home. He stopped coming over as often, not because he didn't want to, but because she watched his every move, every message, every moment he wasn't within her orbit. Control rarely enters a marriage loudly. It tiptoes in, quiet and disguised as concern, disguised as love, disguised as responsibility. But once it settles, its claws sink deeper than people realize. I saw it happening to him. He walked differently now, stiff, cautious, as though any wrong word might provoke another argument. He texted me late at night instead of calling. And when he did call, it was always from his car, whispering so she wouldn't hear. I feel trapped, he told me once, voice barely above breath. I don't recognize my own home anymore. I listened. I didn't judge. I didn't push him to leave her. I didn't tell him what decisions to make. Instead, I told him the truth that would matter when the storm finally broke. The person who tries to isolate you from your family is not building a future with you. She's building a future for herself. He grew quieter after that. Not angry, just thoughtful. And thoughtfulness is dangerous for someone who depends on manipulation. When a person starts thinking for themselves, the manipulator starts losing control. And I knew instinctively that his wife sensed her power slipping. It wasn't long before she made her next move. It happened on a cold Sunday afternoon. My doorbell rang, and when I opened it, she stood there alone. No notary this time. No polite smile. No sugary voice. Just sharp eyes, a tight jaw, and a woman who had realized the ground beneath her was beginning to crack. We need to talk, she said, stepping inside without waiting for permission, as though the house belonged to her. I let her in not because I feared her, but because I wanted to hear what she had to say when she was no longer pretending. She stood in the middle of my living room, arms crossed, anger radiating off her like heat from an open flame. You're ruining my marriage, she snapped. No greeting. No respect. No attempt at maturity. Just accusation. I raised an eyebrow. Your marriage? Not his. She ignored the question. He's pulling away from me. He's questioning me. He's doubting me. And all because of you. All because he's thinking, I said softly. People who think are harder to control. Her eyes flashed. She wasn't used to being spoken to calmly, rationally, or with emotional clarity. She was used to shouting, guilt-tripping, twisting reality until the other person felt small. But I was not small. And I was not someone she could intimidate. She stepped closer. Let me make something clear, she said through clenched teeth. Your son is my husband, not your puppet. And if you keep meddling, I promise you, you'll regret it. It was almost funny. She thought she was threatening a powerless mother-in-law. She had no idea who she was standing in front of. I measured her quietly, then asked a simple question. Why do you want control of my home? My paperwork? My life? She blinked, startled. What? I don't. You brought a notary with blank forms, I reminded her. You've been asking about my finances. You've been pushing him to send me away. And now you're telling me that my existence threatens your marriage." For the first time, her facade cracked. A flicker of fear passed through her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of losing the luxurious life she imagined she could build if I handed her everything she wanted. She recovered quickly. "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? I don't want to spend the next 20 years taking care of a lonely, broke old woman. I don't want your needs draining our savings. I don't want your medical bills becoming our burden. I don't want your son wasting his life babysitting you." My jaw tightened, not because of the insult but because of the ignorance. She thought I was broke. She thought I was vulnerable. She thought I depended on my son. She thought she was doing him a favor by pushing me out. She had no idea that I could single-handedly secure his future for the next 3 generations without blinking. "Do you know what drains a family?" I asked quietly. She folded her arms. "People like you." I smiled slow and steady. "No. What drains a family is arrogance, greed, entitlement, and people who marry into a family thinking they can rearrange it like furniture." She bristled, opening her mouth for another insult. But then my son's voice echoed from the doorway. "Enough." We both turned. He stood there, eyes burning with a clarity I had not seen in years. He had heard everything. Every word she said, every accusation, every insult she spat toward me. He looked at her. Not with love, not with anger, but with a kind of exhausted truth. "Is this who you really are?" he asked quietly. She froze. "Baby, I didn't mean." "You meant all of it," he said firmly. "You've been saying these things for months." She stumbled toward him, reaching for his arm. "You don't understand. Your mother is trying to turn you against me." "No," he said sharply, pulling his arm away. "She's the only one who's been honest." The room fell silent. My heart beat slowly, painfully, watching my son confront the truth he had tried so hard to avoid. His wife looked between us like a trapped animal, desperate to regain control. "Are you really choosing her over me?" she whispered. "I'm choosing truth," he replied. "I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing what's right." Her face hardened, the sweetness evaporating like steam from a boiling pot. "If you walk out that door," she whispered, "don't come back." He inhaled deeply, then exhaled with a steadiness I didn't expect. "Then I guess this marriage was never love. Just a contract you wanted to control." She didn't stop him when he walked past her. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She simply froze because she had lost. Not to me. Not to him. But to her own greed. My son walked toward me slowly, eyes softening. And in that moment I saw the little boy who used to hold my hand in crowded places, afraid of losing me. He whispered, "Mom, can I stay here tonight?" I opened my arms, and he stepped into them without hesitation. For the first time in months my home felt like a home again, not a battlefield. But deep inside I knew the war wasn't over yet, because a person like her doesn't walk away quietly. Ever. The next morning my house felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, but suspended, like the world itself was holding its breath. My son sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee slowly, silently, as though every movement hurt. He hadn't slept much. I could see that in the way his shoulders slumped and his eyes looked distant. That's the thing about separation, about stepping away from someone who controlled your mind, your choices, your peace. Even when it's the right decision, it still breaks something inside. "Mom," he finally said, his voice rough from a sleepless night. "Do you think she'll try to come here?" I looked at him with soft understanding. "Yes," I said honestly. "But not because she misses you. Because she fears losing control." He swallowed hard and nodded slowly. He understood. We spent the day quietly, almost tenderly. I cooked breakfast for the first time in ages. Real breakfast, not the lonely little meals I'd been making for myself. He helped me chop vegetables, wash dishes without being asked, and we talked about simple things. Memories of his father, stories from his childhood, dreams he used to have before life became complicated. It felt like a small patch on a large wound, but it was something. Healing always starts with small things. That afternoon, he stepped outside to take a call from work. and I stood at the window watching him pace on the porch. The cold air turned his breath to fog, and for the first time in months I saw my son, the real version of him. The gentle one. The thoughtful one. The one who didn't need anyone's permission to exist. But peace is never allowed to stay long in a house that a manipulative person has marked. And right on cue, just as the sunset painted the sky in tired shades of orange and gray, her car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out. Not crying, not apologizing, not even looking remorseful. She walked with the confidence of someone who still believed the world owed her obedience. My son saw her and froze. I opened the front door before she reached it. She didn't greet me. She didn't even look at me. She went straight to him. "Come home," she said sharply, as if issuing a command rather than extending an invitation. He didn't move. "Not tonight," he said quietly. "I need space." Her eyes narrowed. "Space from what?" she snapped. "From your mother's poison? Or from your own weakness?" I stepped forward, but he gently put a hand out, not to stop me, but to tell me he needed to handle this himself. "Don't talk to her like that," he said firmly. She scoffed. "You're defending her? After everything she's done to us?" She looked at me then, finally looked at me, and her eyes were like ice. "You must feel proud," she said with bitter venom. "You finally got what you wanted. You broke us apart." "I didn't break anything," I said softly. "Truth did." She laughed. A short, humorless sound. "Truth? Don't make me laugh. You manipulated him. You twisted everything. You're jealous that he has a life without you." My son shook his head slowly, heartbreak in every line of his face. "You still don't get it," he whispered. "She didn't push me away. You did. With your demands. Your greed. Your constant suspicion." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh please. Don't pretend your mother is innocent. She's been trying to get between us since the wedding." He stared at her for a long, painful moment. "You don't even hear yourself," he said quietly. "Listen to the way you talk. The way you blame. The way you twist everything into your own story. You're not looking for truth. You're looking for advantage." Her lips trembled. Not with sadness but with rage. A deep, burning rage that comes when a manipulator loses control of their puppet. "If you walk away now," she whispered, "don't expect me to wait." "I'm not asking you to wait," he replied, voice steady. "I'm asking you to change. To respect my mother. To respect me. To respect our home." She took a step back as if slapped. "I won't beg," she snapped. "No one asked you to," he said softly. Her eyes flickered wildly. She wasn't expecting this version of him, the strong one, the clear one, the one who wasn't trapped anymore. She took a breath, raised her chin, and delivered the final card she thought would break him. "If you go inside that house, our marriage is over." He didn't flinch. He didn't break. He simply turned, walked up the steps, and whispered, "Then I guess it was never a marriage. Just a deal." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She stood there for a moment, stunned, the truth settling over her like frost on a window. Then she turned and walked away. Fast, furious, and frightened. Her car engine roared to life, and she sped off without looking back. My son closed the door gently behind us. Not slamming it, not locking it, not barricading himself from the world. Just closing it. He stood there silently, leaning against the wall, breathing deeply, his eyes wet but not broken. "Mom," he whispered, "did I do the right thing?" I placed my hand over his heart. "You did the honest thing. The brave thing. And sometimes, that's the only right thing a person can do." He pulled me into a long, trembling hug. Not the hug of a child seeking comfort, but of a man finally finding his truth after being lost for far too long. That night, the house wasn't silent anymore. It was peaceful. But deep inside me I knew. Person like her doesn't disappear. She was wounded, embarrassed, exposed, and people like her always come back for one last attempt. The storm wasn't finished. It was gathering strength. For a few days, everything felt strangely calm, as if the house itself was exhaling after holding tension for far too long. My son settled into a gentle rhythm, helping me around the house, taking calls from work on the porch, rediscovering simple routines that had vanished under years of emotional pressure. He cooked dinner one evening, something he hadn't done since his early 20s. He even laughed, small laughs at first, then real ones, the kind that sounded like pieces of his old self returning. But healing is never linear. Behind those moments of peace, I could sense the weight he carried, like a shadow that followed him from room to room. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his phone, checking something, expecting something. Fear or hope, I couldn't tell. Trauma blurs those lines. He wasn't waiting for her. He was waiting for the moment he could finally believe she wouldn't attack again. And then, as always, manipulators have impeccable timing. It was late evening when her presence returned. Not physically this time, but through a message. His phone dinged. He looked at the screen, froze, then exhaled slowly as though bracing himself for impact. "It's her," he said quietly. He handed me the phone. The message read, "You ruined everything. I didn't deserve this. You owe me at least one chance to talk. Not love. Not understanding. Not accountability. Just blame. An entitlement." He took the phone back and stared at it for a long moment before typing a short response. "Please give me space." And that was all. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't respect that boundary. This wasn't a woman who accepted limits. She was the kind who believed that anyone trying to protect themselves was personally attacking her. Manipulators see distance as disrespect. They see silence as betrayal. And they see independence as war. 3 days later, she arrived in person. No warning. No invitation. The doorbell rang sharply, echoing through the quiet hall. My son stiffened. He knew that ring. He knew that energy. A chill passed through him the way cold wind slips under a door. "Mom," he whispered, voice tight. "She's here." I stood beside him as he opened the door. She wasn't angry this time. She was something worse, calm. Too calm. A controlled, practiced calm. The kind people wear when they've rehearsed their manipulative performance in the mirror. Her eyes were puffy, her makeup slightly smudged, but her posture was rigid with determination. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. My son hesitated. I stayed silent, letting him decide. "Okay," he finally said. "But outside." They stepped onto the porch. I remained near the door, not intruding but close enough in case things escalated. She wasted no time. "I've been thinking," she began, voice trembling in a way that sounded intentional. "Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I wasn't being fair." A very calculated opening. My son nodded slowly. "I never wanted conflict," he said. "I just needed you to respect my boundaries." Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of something sharp. "Boundaries," she repeated. "Is that what your mother calls them?" There it was. The mask slipping. He sighed deeply. "This isn't about her. It's about us." She stepped closer. "I'll change," she whispered. "I promise. Just come home. I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't live like this." Her voice cracked perfectly, too perfectly. My son stayed quiet, studying her face, searching for something real. Then she made her biggest mistake. She glanced at the house. Specifically, at me standing near the screen door. Her eyes hardened. "She's enjoying this," she spat suddenly. "You know that, right? She wants you back under her wing like a little boy. She wants you weak." My son's shoulders tensed. "She's not controlling me," he said firmly. "Really?" she hissed. "Because it looks like she's winning." That sentence, "she's winning," revealed everything. To her, relationships weren't love. They were battles. People weren't partners, they were prizes. Marriage wasn't unity. It was ownership. My son stepped back, almost involuntarily. "This isn't a competition," he said softly. "Why do you always talk like someone has to lose for someone else to be happy?" Her face darkened. "Because that's how life works," she snapped. "Someone always loses." He closed his eyes for a moment, exhausted, defeated by the weight of her worldview. When he opened them again, something in him had shifted. A new clarity. A new strength. "Then we shouldn't be together," he whispered. Her mouth fell open. "No," she said quickly. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said, steady now. I'm done being someone's battlefield. She froze. Completely. And in that silence for the first time, she truly understood that she had lost control. Panic flooded her expression. You can't do this, she whispered. You can't walk away after everything I gave you. You didn't give, he replied gently. You demanded. Her voice cracked. Not the rehearsed way this time, but real, raw, desperate. So that's it? You're choosing her over me. He shook his head sadly. I'm choosing myself. She stared at him, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling in angry tremors. Then she whispered the line that sealed everything. You'll regret this. And when you do, don't come crawling back. He didn't respond. He simply opened the door and walked inside. Slowly, calmly, like a man closing a chapter. She stood on the porch for several seconds, stunned, shaking, broken, but not in a way that evoked sympathy. In a way that signaled, this fight isn't over. Then she left. No screaming, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet, cold retreat. When he stepped into the living room, he didn't collapse this time. He didn't crumble. He sat down slowly, exhaled, and whispered, I feel free. And for the first time I believed him. But freedom has consequences. And people like her never walk away without one final strike. The next morning felt strangely light, as if the air had thinned and the house had finally shaken off a storm that had lingered too long. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft ribbons, and for the first time in months my son looked rested. Not healed, no, healing is slower than that, but rested. Calm. Present. We had breakfast together in comfortable silence, a luxury neither of us realized we'd been craving. But peace, especially after surviving manipulation, comes with a quiet suspicion. A part of you waits for the next explosion, the next unexpected move, the next emotional ambush. And deep down I sensed he felt it too, even if he didn't want to say it out loud. We didn't have to wait long. By noon, while my son was fixing a few loose boards on the back porch, I noticed a car slowing down in front of the house. Not stopping, just slowing. Watching. The tinted windows made it impossible to see inside, but I recognized the shape of the vehicle instantly. Her car. That familiar dread curled into my stomach like cold smoke. I didn't call him. I didn't want to interrupt the first peaceful moment he'd had in a long time. Instead, I walked quietly to the front window, peeking from behind the curtain. The car lingered for several seconds, then drove off slowly, as though she wanted me to know she'd been there. Not ringing the doorbell this time. Not shouting. Just watching. It was a new tactic, silent intimidation. A few hours later, when he finally came inside, sweaty and smiling faintly, I gently told him what I'd seen. His face didn't twist with fear the way it once did. Instead, he nodded with a thoughtful heaviness. She's testing how far she can push, he murmured. She always does this after losing control. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. A survival skill learned the hard way. That evening we talked for a long time, longer than we ever had before. He told me about the hidden cracks in their marriage, the emotional landmines he'd navigated for years, the guilt he carried, and the loneliness he felt in a home that never felt like his. He confessed he had spent more nights on the couch than in the bedroom. He admitted he had memorized her cycles of anger, the way soldiers memorize enemy movements. He had been planning his exit for months, but fear kept him trapped. Fear of backlash. Fear of being painted as the villain. Fear of losing everything. But the moment she tried to use my supposed weakness as a weapon, something inside him snapped awake. I'm not going back, Mom, he said firmly. Even if she cries. Even if she threatens. Even if she pretends to change. And for the first time I heard certainty in his voice. Not hope. Not doubt. Certainty. But manipulators never stop at emotional manipulation. When that fails, they escalate. The next morning a loud knock erupted at the door. Not a gentle knock. Not a hesitant one. A demanding, aggressive pounding. My son froze mid-step. Stay behind me, he whispered. When he opened the door, 2 police officers stood on the porch. My heart dropped into my stomach. Are you Michael Evans? The taller officer asked. Yes, he replied cautiously. We received a call regarding a domestic disturbance and welfare check involving your wife. She claims she's concerned for your safety and believes you may be under undue influence. There it was. Her last strike. The nuclear option. She had weaponized the system. My son's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "Officers, I'm perfectly safe," he said. "I'm not being held against my will, and I'm not under any influence. I left voluntarily due to emotional and mental abuse. I need space, and she's refusing to accept that." The officers exchanged glances. "Do you want us to document that?" one asked. "Yes," he said firmly. "Please." They took the statement. They looked around. They asked questions. I answered truthfully. And slowly their suspicion faded. They even apologized for the intrusion. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," one of them admitted quietly. "People call us when they lose control, hoping we'll scare the other person into compliance." After they left, my son sat on the couch and buried his face in his hands, not crying, just exhausted. A kind of exhaustion that isn't physical but spiritual. "She really did it," he whispered. "She actually tried to use the police to pull me back." Manipulators only know one language: force. Emotional force. Psychological force. Social force. And when all else fails, legal force. But she had underestimated something important. She had underestimated the strength my son had rebuilt in himself the moment he walked through our door. She had underestimated the clarity he found in truth instead of chaos. She had underestimated me. That same afternoon he called a lawyer. Not out of anger, out of necessity. He explained everything. Every message. Every threat. Every tactic. The lawyer listened carefully and said, "You're in the right place emotionally, but she is escalating. Let's protect you before things get worse." By evening, legal documents were in motion. A separation filing. A no-contact recommendation. And documentation of manipulation. He slept deeply that night. No nightmares. No sudden waking. No tension in his jaw or fists. Just deep, unbroken rest. The next morning I found him sitting on the porch sipping coffee, watching the sunrise with peaceful eyes. A sight I hadn't seen since he was a child. "I didn't know freedom could feel like this," he whispered. "You earned it," I said softly. And just like that, something shifted permanently. The storm was not returning. The cycle was broken. The chapter was closed. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding anymore. He wasn't trapped anymore. He was free. And sometimes freedom isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It isn't celebrated. Sometimes freedom is just a quiet morning, a warm cup of coffee, and the realization that no one can control you anymore.